Today is August 3rd, and you're listening to the Beer Temple Podcast.
Remember, this is what we wanted. Remember, this is what we said. To never be heard or seen from again. Remember, this is what we wanted. Remember, this is what we said. To never be heard or seen from again.
Hello, and welcome to the Beer Temple Podcast. I'm your co-host, Mike Shalau. I'm here with my co-host, Chris Quinn.
Yeah, I am here.
Chris, how are you?
I'm doing well. How are you, man?
Great. You know, a lot of things have changed since the restart of the podcast. One of them is me finding out that that song is in stereo. So
Right.
at the old studio, you could only hear one. They were mono headphones. So like whatever this is what you want, that comes in at different times and different ears, and it still tripped me out a little bit because at the old studio it would only be one side of it.
Right.
So,
Yeah, you would hear like the different voices and different sides. And I was thinking while the intro song just played that I was just sitting here thinking I've probably listened to this song more than anyone on earth.
probably more than the people who recorded it.
Oh, way more than them.
Yeah.
Way more than them.
Yeah,
But
it's what, Gorilla Meat.
yes, by the band Jogger.
Great song, actually.
Yeah, any UID fans out there? It's a deep cut.
Yeah.
But anyway.
So you were out of town recently.
I was out of town, just got back not too long ago. I mean, I was back since last week, right?
Was the last show?
I
Oh,
think
maybe.
I just had
Yeah.
gotten back. I had just
Right.
gotten back, but I was out of town. We didn't talk too much about it. We talked about how it was a Trillium and Treehouse and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But then I was home by myself and...
Dangerous.
Right. I did nothing. I have a very boring wife, and my wife just got back. She drove back, and she went through Ohio, and she doesn't even ask anymore. She pulls over for the night, like she does it in 2 stages. She had the kids with her, and she knows that she's going to stop at Fatheads and pick me up beer. And it was a big kerfuffle last year because she bought how much I wanted in 12 packs, not in, which are like, oh my gosh, you wanted what? You wanted 3 6-packs and she bought you 3 12-packs? No, I wanted 3 cases and she bought me 3 12-packs, and it caused a bit of a stir. And she almost did it again this time, but I caught her just in time while she was there. And I was like, no, 3 cases. She had to make multiple trips, but I got my Headhunter. I'm drinking some right now.
So
you guys were talking about some of your favorite classic IPAs, and I said
We
to
were.
me, this one was, it's up there with my fave. It scratches all the itches. I'll say that for what I want out of this beer. I love the old school hop profile. I love the bitterness. I love I would call this Midwest malt profile.
Sure.
But it's very close to. I mean, nowadays this would be probably off the far end of the diagram on West Coast for how bitter it is. But it's definitely, I think, a Midwest IPA, which is a sub-style of a West Coast, I'd say. But that might be me making all that up.
Well, it's like it has these oniony characters. There's 6 that
I
we've
love.
like the New England style, or what it has evolved into, has totally thumbed its nose at, as any rebellious youngster must at the father it's rebelling against, right?
Right.
So like that like dank, oniony, savory thing, which also is like that combined with like apricot and citrus is pretty unique to IPA. Like they're and not just in beer, but in flavors. Like there aren't a lot of like flavor combinations where you're like smelling apricots and grapefruit and lemon peel and onion and a little bit of garlic, and you're like, and I love it. Like maybe in some like Indian cooking or something like
Barbecue,
that.
I was thinking maybe some barbecue rubs
yeah.
would have something like
It's got
that.
coriander and
Yeah.
onion powder, but it's like it's just an interesting like when you smell a lot of newer school IPAs, if you were completely blind, you probably would not be able to tell that much of difference between that and like a fruit cup, which is not a knock. It's just like we've evolved it to the point that it's fruit, and then a little bit of like coconut maybe. And I would imagine at some point that there's going to be a reappearance of the more nightshade, or not nightshade, allium earthly tones into those things, but maybe
That's
not.
cool.
I hope so.
That'd be super cool. Yeah, for me, the mark of this beer is, I think right before we split 3 cans among 2 people, so I probably have, 2/3 of a glass. We poured minutes ago?
Yeah.
And my glass is almost done. I wasn't doing it on purpose. It's what I when I have this beer, same with Surge. The beer just goes down, and then you're like, well, I'm just going to have another one, which is why I got 6-pack 2 years ago, and I was like, oh my gosh, it's
gone.
I've drank 4 in a day. I don't normally do that of one beer, and now I only have 2.
That's like the actual function of bitterness, right? That's like, and that's the thing that gets you. You specifically also gets me. I just don't talk about it as much with new school IPAs. Is that there isn't that bitter finish, and it's not because you like love bitterness so much. It's that it's a return on your palate to like almost more to neutral if it finishes bitter. Because your palate's not supposed to be sweet, right?
Right.
And so it's a return that makes you like, oh, I need more of that. It's actually something we dealt with Wilby, which is our flagship saison, where we've increased the bitterness of that every single time we've brewed it, which is not something I was expecting. I thought it was going to be like, this is a fermentation-driven beer, and we're going to let those dance, but the bitterness on the finish is just so, and it's not an overly bitter beer. I think it's like 28 IBUs or something like that, but it started at 22, and it just has been going up ever since. Maybe it's 30 now.
Do you think that's lupulin threshold shift?
No.
No.
Okay. We're using it's specific. It's intentional.
No, I'm saying that. Do you think that you guys are becoming used to that and liking it, and you need a little bit more to get to the same place?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I think it's more of just the vision of what that beer's ever evolving to get closer and closer to the vision of what we think it should be. It's the only thing we brew regularly. We brew other stuff like multiple times, but it's the only thing I'm like, we need to make more of that. Right. And it's to evolve. Everything's based off of that beer too, so like all the other beers are doing that, but it's mostly about understanding our process and what I think is going to happen there actually ends up in the final product. And just there's something about it that like it's only like 6, maybe like 6 or 8 IBUs, which I guess is a significant amount, but
yeah, it's decent.
It's the same beer, but it's such a more comprehensive experience from start to finish when you drink it.
Yeah, I totally agree. I have been doing so many of these virtual events, and it's been one of the most fun parts for me is to show people how bitterness is, that hops are really used for bitterness. That's why they exist in beer.
That's why they did.
Right. I would say that they still hold a huge if you think of that, over 99% of all the beer in the world is light colored lager.
Right.
That's why hops are there.
Right.
I mean, it is there for bitterness, and what I say is, I think I've even talked about it on this show. It's not about perceived bitterness. It's about the how it dries a beer out. You perceive it to be dry. It gives it a finish. Whenever you say it has a crisp finish, you're talking about the bitterness. And when it's at its best, I think the drinker isn't noticing it coming on. Now, all of us here have pretty, I think, high bitterness tolerances when it comes to IPA. We probably just shift into that mode and we're not really thinking about it. And that's the whole point. You're not really thinking about it, and then you just take another sip because that's what you naturally do, and your mouth becomes dry. Right. And that's how that beer goes down so fast.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Well, the pH of your mouth actually goes up as you swallow, right? So that's like, the compound THP, that mouse eats Cheerio thing, that only shows up in your mouth in the finish because your pH of your mouth is returning to the normal pH of your mouth. Whereas if it's an acidic beer, will cover the THP up. So that has to be a similar effect where, like, as your mouth returns to the normal pH and this bitterness, like, hits you, it's like this drying sensation. Your mouth's not drying out, but it makes you want to drink more.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
this headhunter is doing a great job.
Yeah, I'm happy. I'm glad I've got 2 more in the quick chiller in the store that I'm going to go grab at some point. But I do have to say, I was at Trillium. My wife was at Treehouse. She picked up a whole bunch of beer.
Split squad.
And yes, we had to divide and conquer when visiting our faves. And
so if you're married, do all of your ticks legally count as her ticks? And
Yeah.
her ticks count as your ticks?
yeah, and if we
No
split
one
up, I
talks
get
about
half
that.
of the. I get half the tick.
You only get half the ticks? Oh, so that's why you guys are staying together.
Yeah.
You can't let that tick.
We're staying together for the ticks.
Yeah. The ticks.
We're keeping together for the ticks.
Like a Blink-182 beer nerd song.
But we, I left the mall in Boston Joe's mini fridge because we picked up extra for you. I brought some Julie-ish, and I might. It's still sitting in the fridge, so it's going to be pretty stable. It hasn't been touched. I might have them send them back out, but I do have some Headhunter for you, and I do have a consolation prize, which I would say is maybe better because I felt really bad, and I realized when I went down to the Delaware Shore that I had forgotten it. But then I saw a shirt that just screamed you. So here you go. And I got it for you. Oh, and you drop it. You drop it on the ground. But that's for you. And I'm sorry, but you're welcome. So that's for you. I saw it at the boardwalk. And I just thought of you. So
we're not even going to say what it says on
why not?
there.
You can't. It's not a bad. It's a beautiful thing.
People my age know the website for sure.
Is that a website?
That was definitely a website.
Is it really?
Oh, yeah.
Oh. Well, what it says, I can't say what it says.
You can say what it
Yeah.
says.
It says MILF Hunter on it. So I saw the shirt and I said, I know one of them. And I walked in and said, I will take that shirt, please.
All right, so now anyone who wins a fantasy draft has to get a MILF Hunter shirt.
Exactly.
Yeah.
MILF Hunter. So, so I was at the boardwalk and I said, how can I make it up to my friend Mike for forgetting it? And then almost on cue, I looked over and said, that's how.
I don't know why this is happening, but I'm blushing.
You are.
It's a show, you can't see it, but this is the weirdest I've felt in a long time. Thank you, Chris.
Yeah, it's okay. There's nothing wrong with liking MILFs. It's okay.
I'll wear this on my delivery route tomorrow.
Exactly.
This, nice philosophic Saison brewer. We're strolling in the MILF Hunter shirt.
Oh, God, can you imagine? I'm telling you one thing, and I don't think I'm saying this with any irony at all. If someone came in selling me Saison in that shirt, I would, without a doubt, pick up some of the beer. I mean, I'd be like...
Just the cognitive dissonance alone.
I would be like, man, bravo. Yeah, I'm sold. All right. What do you got?
This is a very I was at the shore shirt.
Oh, those stores are the best. I told my brother, all right, you got to get me out of here because I'm going to go broke.
Yeah.
There was a picture of the one that this is also true. I can pull up my phone. I texted my wife. I said, are you going to go? Because she was still down there. I was like, are you going back to the boardwalk? Because there's been a shirt that I've been thinking about a lot. I said it's one with Thanos on it, and he's doing the rap prayer hands. He's wearing mirrored aviators. He has a king's crown on, slanted, cockeyed on his head. He has presumably marijuana smoke, just like casually drifting out of a just opened mouth. He's not blowing it out. It's just like trickling out of his mouth. And then he's got 2 pinky rings, which are 2 of the whatever gems that are in there on his prayer hands. And then the rest of them are as like a gold bracelet. And then he's got a purple fur sleeveless jacket on, and I looked at it and said, that's when I told my brother, I was like, I got to get out of here. I'm going to buy every shirt. I'm going to buy every shirt in the store. Because I loved that shirt so much.
I remember for about a few months when I was in college, I lived in Nashville, Tennessee. I was like doing an internship at a record label because I wanted to work in the music industry at that point. And I forget what mall I went to, but it was unlike any mall I'd ever seen. And I walked by an independent store, and I was just like, it was horrified and confused and stopped dead in my tracks because there was a mannequin that had a rosary on. Like a bespoke rosary, a handmade rosary, and behind the rosary was a bright red sweatshirt that was embroidered, and it said "freelance gynecologist."
Oh,
and the juxtaposition of the rosary sitting literally on top of the words "freelance gynecologist" just blew my mind in a way that my little 18-year-old brain couldn't even like fathom. I was just like, "What is happening?"
Yeah, I have a couple shirts like that I wear to the gym because that's another place. That's the place
you wear your freelance gynecology shirt to the gym.
No, there are certain shirts I don't. That one I only break out for special occasions, but I do have one of a ripped Jesus that says "Hallowed be thy gains," and he's like curling. And he has a crown of thorns on while he's doing it, and I have worn that one to the gym. I also have one of a jacked William Shakespeare with he's got like the classic bard thing with the huge frilly collar, and his sleeves have been ripped off, so they're not even like tailored; they're just ripped, and his arms are massive, and it says
it's canonical.
Right. It says, "Dost thou even hoist, sir?" And I've worn that one to the gym as well. That one's a sleeveless, and I'm afraid I've never had the guts to wear that one.
Is that the shirt your wife told you can't wear? There was one you told me you got that your wife said you can't actually wear that to the gym. Do you remember that one? Because I'm not. This isn't me like baiting you. I literally can't remember what it was, but.
I think I said that, and she said, "Yeah, you can't wear that."
It was that shirt.
I don't know. No, because I've worn that one. It might have been. I have several really good ones, but I don't remember which was the one.
Do you have like
a
muscle tee, like an actual like full on muscle tee, not just like a tank?
No, Oh. Yes. No, that's what it was. It was the William Shakespeare one, right. And she said I couldn't wear it. It was a muscle tee, and she said you need to have an undershirt. You said you can't do that because I have a very hairy chest. I'm in not good shape at all, and so yeah, I wore that one to the gym and enjoyed it. I definitely saw some people giving me the stink eye and stuff like that, which is
because you were too strong.
Yeah. I mean, I love it.
Intimidated.
I mean, yeah. I don't want to alienate even more people, but there's some really awesome shirts that I see at the gym, and I'm just like, this is. Where do you shop? And then I found out where. At the boardwalk in Ocean City, Maryland.
Everyone's just driving there, pilgrimaging.
Yeah. I mean, here's one I saw: professional firefighter in case of, and it says it in huge blocky letter stuff. Professional firefighter in case of sexual emergency, pull hose, and then it had an arrow pointing down.
So these are like
Spencer
shirts out of
tees,
time. You went like back in time, like 15 years.
Well, you'd think so. There's definitely stuff like that, but then there was one Trump as the Terminator, and it says Trump 2024. I'll be back. It was like I said. Could have gone broke. Could have gone. Another one of Trump, shirtless, jacked, covered in prison tattoos. And all of them were just like, they all had little meaning. Like he had one across the stomach that said the Don. He had a whole bunch of like tiny script. I couldn't get close enough to like read it. It was... He had like a rosary tattooed onto his chest.
And then a freelance gynecologist tattoo under that.
Probably. probably. It was so good. I mean, we should probably talk more about. You know what?
Thanks
This
for
is kind of.
Thanks for coming to this episode of Talking Teas.
Yeah, talking teas. Well, that's kind of what I wanted to talk about a little bit, I suppose. Well, I wanted to talk about I wanted to have a love fest. I wanted to talk about things we love, and that is very much stuff I love. Walking into that
King of transitions, right here.
yeah, right.
Yeah.
The walking into that store, I was like, I had so much enjoyment thinking of people who buy the shirts, people who made the shirts, and I just got a nice warm feeling. I was like, I love this place. I love that this place exists.
Yeah.
And
like not ironically, like maybe some of your love for those shirts is like because of the cognitive dissonance or the irony of them, but like it's genuinely exciting that exists.
Oh, yes. And I genuinely said, if I'm here for too long, I'm going to keep finding ones that I like.
Right.
And the shirts are not cheap. I mean, I'm not saying in quality. They might be quite cheap in quality.
They're probably the cheapest.
They're not cheap in monetary. So they're kind of expensive shirts relative to what you would think they might cost. And
usually those are kind of the kind of things you get at like Free Will.
Right.
Or Goodwill, not Free Will. It's going to be too much
Right.
Heidegger.
Yeah.
All right.
But anyway, so I figured we could have just a sit down, have a love fest. I've been known to be a little cynical. I was talking to Steven, the bar manager. He just came in and was talking about how there was a hazy on draft, which we always have at least one. We pretty much always have at least
a
two.
couple, yeah.
And someone was in there and said, "Whoa, you guys have a hazy on?" And Steven was like, "Yeah." And he's like, "Doesn't Chris hate those? He allows them and to be on." And Steven was like, I mean, I guess.
It's also funny to think of someone thinking of you as like ruling with an iron fist,
right?
Here, where it's like,
well, Steven also
thou shalt not pour a hazy.
Exactly, like you're fired. Who put this on? And just like flipping over a table. And he said, you know, I think people have the wrong idea of some of your opinions, Chris.
Yeah.
And I said, yeah, you're probably right. I mean, I think they probably know how I feel, but they think maybe I'm a little bit like more dogmatic about it, or like trying to impose my preference more than I actually am.
Right. I think this is something we share. We both have very, very strong, specific opinions, and yet we feel very little desire to impose them on anyone else. It's like, I want you to have a great time. I feel this way, and we'll talk about them in a very intense way. But it's like, oh yeah, no, of course. Like I love that you like that. I'm never gonna not, and you're never gonna not pour something that is like a very like important style in craft beer. The beer temple, I think, is like people view these things as like you're the auteur, right? And it's all just like my vision that I make all these automatons. It's like that's not the case at all. Like this is the thing. The idea of the beer temple is to revere beer, right? It doesn't say revere the beers that Chris likes, right? And so you're very actually in the actual process of this. You're very good at embracing all of the things that people might like about beer.
Yeah, it's part of beer. When we first opened, I had Budweiser. Nobody bought it, but I did it as...
Did that feel good, though?
Well, no. I mean, I switched it. I found the ones that we had, but I was trying to think of, like, what beers do you have to have in a beer called the Beer Temple? And Budweiser was one of the first ones I thought of. I was like, that's a very important beer.
Right.
So, and I also wanted to... I also bought it and brought it in because I wanted to make a kind of a statement out of it too. Like this beer has a place here, and it's not about being snobby or anything like that. So I think people who listen to this show anyway, you know, probably think that you know, when I walk in, they better put the hazy down. That's, you know, stacked to the floor for, you know, for some reason. But But yeah, so
Stacked to the floor. So.
yeah, or stacked, stack them high, I guess.
Let them fly.
Yeah.
So this is like the opposite of the airing of grievances. This is you being like, these are the things I really, us being, these are the things we really love about craft beer, because we both, and two of us together, have a tendency to be like, well, here's what's going wrong.
Right.
But that leaves out a lot of interesting conversation about like, well, we don't talk about what's going right because you don't need to talk about what's going right or the things that we actually care about. Specifically because you and I know each other really well. We know what we care about. And it is never something we think would be like a radio topic, right? It's never like, oh, this will be like, let's talk about the things we love.
And I did think when coming up with the idea for this show, I thought people may not be interested in this, but as I've said to you, Mike, several times, doesn't matter. There's another show next week.
We care not for the desires of our listeners.
Well, I mean, you got to go out and do this and not be worried about it, because there's always going to be another one. You can always just be like, man, this week sucked. I'll just see if they're good next week. And if you hate us next week and the next week, then stop listening. But the idea is that's probably not going to be the case.
I kind of hope that this turns into a thing where people will send us things that they love about beer that no one's talking about.
How would they do that? How would they do that?
They would send us a physically written letter only, or an electronic letter to an address that you know that I haven't.
Insiders at craftbeertemple.com is the
only been on
the
the show
email
about
address.
100 times.
Yeah.
Still,
But the address is 3173 North Elston Avenue. That's ELSTON Avenue. That's in Chicago, Illinois, 60618. That is the address of the Beer Temple. And you can send it to Serge's attention, or Mike's, or mine, or anyone's.
Jamie.
Yeah,
Edmar.
Jamie, Edmar, anyone's.
Logan. So yeah. So we're gonna talk about things we love. Chris.
Yeah.
What is something you love about craft beer?
Why? I was going to say, what time? Should we just keep going, Serge? What do you say? Just go. He says he doesn't care. Serge is completely checked out on this topic already. Serge is just in it for the visceral
Conflict.
hate. Yeah. Well, yeah, sure. I'll go first. So one thing I do love about beer. Let me also qualify this. I want to talk about stuff that I love about the current state of craft beer, specifically. Yeah. You can do it a little bit different for you, Mike.
Sure.
But for me, it's about right now.
Time to prepare, so.
Because a lot of it, yeah. So it's also, I think a lot of what we do is, kind of complain about yesteryear, or, literally probably like last year. It was so much better back in my day, 18 months ago. Yeah. So I want to talk about the current state. And one thing I do like is, for example, with this Headhunter, I love the regionality of craft beer. I don't want that to go away. I think it's so fun. I was talking to somebody who had an Eyinger Hef and was talking about how he's going to go down to Austin in 2 weeks and couldn't wait to get the Live Oak and drink Live Oak Hefeweizen down there in Texas. And to me, I will say I haven't been to Austin. It's one of my it's on the very short list of beer cities in the U.S. that I still need to get to, that I would consider a beer city, and just one of the cities, honestly, that I want to get to that I haven't been. And one of the main reasons is to drink the beer down there. I want to go to Austin Beer Garden. I want to go to Live Oak. I want to go to Jester King. And who's making? Do you know that Jester? I mean, just to be a little haty. Do you know that they're doing a hazy?
Couldn't get a whole minute into the
fruited hazy IPA mixed with 3-year spawn. So we'll all right. But anyway, we're gonna move on. So, but anyway,
Abstain.
Right.
Comment.
So
Let them do whatever they want.
I love that. I like going to the West Coast and being able to like see Pliny in the wild.
Or Whole Foods.
Right. Whatever,
Yeah.
man.
No,
I mean, for real.
Cool, I had an experience where I saw Pliny in a Whole Foods.
And you had a little bit of excitement. I'm
I was
sure
like,
you
this
did.
Is so cool. Like I don't even think I bought one, but I was like, it was more just to be like, I bought one at Whole Foods.
Yeah.
Let's do this.
I don't want that to go away. For a little bit, I was worried, but I think it's kind of becoming regional again, and hyper localized in a lot of other ways. And I think that's cool, especially when you find ones that you connect to. And I don't ever want that to go away. I don't ever want craft beer or distribution to be so smooth and streamlined that you can just get any beer whenever you want. That trading or Tavor or whatever it is just makes it so easy. I don't want that to happen because I love the regionality. I love that it's special.
Or just that the playbook is so set in stone, right? Where like it might not be that you can get the same exact brand of beer everywhere, but you get the same exact like style everywhere. Like that, we talk a lot about, and we bemoan a lot about like hazy IPA and everything, and it being like you just got every brewer's got one. But like there's still plenty of things where it's like, oh, you go to this place, and you can go to 6 or 7, you go to like San Francisco, you go to 6 or 7 different breweries that are doing things that like really no one else is doing. It might be like people might be doing shades of it everywhere else, but it's like you can go to places and go to New York, you can go to places and find things that are just unique to either that region or that brewery specifically, and that's just like super exciting.
Yeah, I mean, you go to Wisconsin, you get New Glarus and a whole bunch of others as well. You go to, just here in the Midwest, you go to St. Louis. For me, Civil Life is just a brewery that does that style does not exist in many other places in the country right now.
Yeah.
That's doing it to that. I mean, they have like 4 different types of brown ale. I mean, it's amazing.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
Even you go to Philly, and I think I'll probably get this wrong. It's Yards or Trogs. I think it's Yards. And their flagship is called Kensinger, and it's a mild. And you can get it in the corner grocery stores. Not even the grocery stores. You can get it in the corner stores. And it's fun. I think that's cool.
Like that's like the light side of branding, right? Where like we talk, you and I specifically, I don't know if we've talked about it on the podcast as much, but about like IP theft and just like video gamification or cartoonification of a lot of the branding going on right now. But like the light side of that is that the reason that you can get that in the corner store, the beer is probably fantastic, but like because the branding was probably so strong and the marketing of it, and that it's in people's minds that they'll go to the store and they'll buy it and they'll like it. And they've had it probably if it's at a corner store like that. But like to break through with something like that is you have to present it in a way that people will be like, oh, I'm going to like this. And in a way where it's going to be like, we're going to give you the same exact thing again. And you're going to like it again. It's not just like, how do I hype this up? Which is a very, very cool, like other side of the cool side of the pillow of the marketing aspect of craft beer.
Yeah. And even when I was on the East Coast, I went into a couple bars. Well, the first one, the one that comes to mind was I was at Monk's in Philly, one of the great beer bars in the country, and they had Hill Farmstead on draft, and it gave me that little like, oh yeah, I'm in the Northeast. I'm on the East Coast or Mid Atlantic. I'm getting into that area. It was still special that it was there. It was one draft, and it was a sour. It wasn't a super fresh IPA because I don't know this for a fact, but I could just see Sean Hill being like, well, I would never say an IPA. I mean, it's but that far. That's hours away.
It, That's not on my family's land,
right? But it was like, oh, I'm in that region of the country now. I'm getting a little closer to Hill Farm. That's super cool because they're a like incredibly special brewery. And how fun is that? I mean, I do want Hill Farm to be in Chicago, but some of the magic would be gone if it was. And I really, at a very deep level, don't want it in Chicago. I don't want Russian River in Chicago. I want them to have that little bit of magic still because I love it.
Yeah, I very much agree with a lot of those things. There's also so much stuff here we don't like. Of course, I would drink them if they were here, but it's
of course.
But I don't want to ever look at a lot of these brands and be like, well, I'll probably get it next week. Like that kills part of the fun. That's like that conversation I was having with Jude about growlers. Like growlers objectively are a terrible packaging format, but there was something about it that made you excited about it, right? And like inaccessibility is objectively like a stupid, terrible like way to go about business. But there's something about brands like that where I'm like, I don't want them to be here. I want those breweries to succeed, obviously, but I don't want them to be like things that I look at on the shelf at Whole Foods in Chicago and be like, all right. Even if they're pulling through, even if they're doing great, just be like, some of those things, I want there to be sacred things, I want there to be special things.
I think for Three Floyds for many years, I know they're expanding wildly now, but they're still pretty small. And for a while, I mean, that was like our thing. I mean, it was just this part, very, very small part of the country. That was like our thing, man. We get Three Floyds here, and Three Floyds is badass. Yeah. Here, have some.
And there was a whole in-joke we created because of how special it was.
Yeah.
Like that started.
I don't know what you're referring to, but yeah.
I don't either. But whatever it might be started because Eric and I would start texting each other pictures of us with Three Floyds because I was working at Benny's and he was doing sales for Half Acre. And people would come into the Benny's and they'd be like, hey, do you have Zombie Dust? Hey, do you have Gumball Head? And like, no, we're out of stock. And then they would either just leave or they would buy like Miller Lite. And then like he would, as a sales rep for Half Acre, would be getting asked, how can we get some Zombie Dust? And so we were just like, and both of us still love those beers.
Yeah.
Like there's something that's still, it's a joke, but there's something about it where it was like there was life to that thing, and it was,
and there was some pride,
Western, and it had broken through into a local mainstream for sure.
Yeah,
which is very cool. Mm-hmm. And yeah, like it's just this symbol, this like a production symbol of locality or regionality is very interesting and very cool to me.
Alpine, when it existed in how it was, and I've heard that there might be another.
Now?
Yep. The one that I love. When that existed, and I've heard some of the people have opened up a new brewery in that town now and are making kind of a Nelson version. Yeah. That was exciting to me. I think some of these breweries have gotten bigger, and a little bit of that goes away, which is also fine. But I want there always to be some of that.
And there was certainly a time where the unobtainiumness of beer was just too much, right? It overrode the culture in a way where it got sad and
gamified,
and
like it still is gamified,
and just like hard to believe that it was where it was at. And I don't think that's where we're at right now, which makes this even more fun that there is regionality for it, where it's not like, oh, I can only get this thing at this brewery, and I gotta put chairs out to wait in the rain for it. It's like, it's not that what you're talking about. It's like that I don't know. There's flavor profiles kind of, but there's also just things like there's this Headhunter, like it's really good. It's only in that region, and when you're driving through, you pick it up. I mean, what was that? There was a movie where someone was running Coors Banquet to Florida. It's like
Cannonball, Smoking the Bandit.
Smoking the Bandit. That's what that whole movie was about.
Yeah,
the OG traders. But
tickers, baby. They had to tick it.
They had to tick. And like my uncle would, like, they would go to ski in Colorado, and he would load his trunk up with Coors Banquet, so the kids had to sit with their suitcases on their lap in the back of the car, so they would have Coors Banquet when they drove back. The guy wasn't even really a beer drinker, but like he's like, I gotta get this Coors Banquet.
You guys think at Treehouse you guys are doing something new, but Burt Reynolds and Dom DeLuise were way ahead of you.
Way ahead of you. But it's just also like a little like time machine where you go back to that kind of era when you go to a place and there's something that's only there regionally. It lets you step out of like, I don't know, the internet, where it's like, oh, I'm just gonna go on Amazon and get it, and you have to fight the urge to buy it on Amazon, but you're gonna buy the same thing at some place that isn't Amazon because you're like, I don't really want to send it into space again. But this is something outside of that, right? It's not even like you go on there and find the same product from a supplier you trust more. It's the different thing that was created by people that only exist in this place.
And I think I like how you're saying it's almost like you're seeing it in the wild. You're not needing to search it out. Is kind of just as cool. Like you're at a place in Vermont, and you start seeing The Alchemist and Lawson's and Hill Farm on draft, and you're like, "That's cool, man. This is the local stuff here. That's awesome." Yeah. And it's not just a beer thing. I mean, if it might be different for me, but like when you just go into sandwich shops and stuff like that in Philly, and you just see cheesesteaks, you're like, oh, that's right. This is where they're from. This is where you get them. This is cool.
And like the one in like the random sandwich shop you're in is pretty good.
Yeah.
Right? It's not like it's like, oh, they have to have one here. It's like, no, they all make them well.
Yeah.
It's like hot dogs here, right? Like you go
Right.
somewhere else and get a Chicago style hot dog and you're just like,
Why?
I just want to put ketchup on a bun. Like I'd rather, I don't mind ketchup, but it's like it's just like a thing where you go to like any kind of normal hot dog stand here, you get a pretty good Chicago style hot dog. You go to one in Connecticut and you're like, this ain't it.
Right. Well, pizzas like that, totally. I mean, I think New York style is kind of ubiquitous, but not really. But yeah, there's definitely regional pizzas, and if you have an affinity for one, it is cool. Speaking of local brewers, you have another one over there that you brought, right?
Yeah, I got some Iswas over here. That's a local. No.
Yeah, I mean, that's fine too.
No, I actually brought some a Suarez kind of classic. My parents live about an hour and a half from there, and they when they're bored, they drive up and pester them.
Sweet. Can't wait to try that one. Yeah. Should we take a little bit of a break, Serge, and then we'll come back, and Mike, you can come up with one of the things that you love about beer these days.
Sounds great.
Welcome back to the Beer Temple Podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Chris Quinn, and I'm with Mike Shillau, of course. We're with Fade Master Serge, who needs no introduction, therefore he got none. And we're talking about things that we love about the current state of craft beer. And I want to ask you, Mike, what's something that you just love? It makes you happy about craft beer.
This might not be like beer specific, but I'm really like the way things are trending currently. I'm really into the current trend of MILFs and the hunting of them, as this shirt says. No,
I'll give it a pass. Let's talk about it.
Yeah, no, I'm just kidding. The thing I actually is not necessarily specific to the time and place of beer, but it is the experience of sharing something that is something that can't be denied as a physical experience, right? And this has nothing to do with the MILFs. It's that if I split a bottle of beer with you, we're both having the same like organoleptic physical experience. And I'm someone who's very, very, very prone to abstraction more than necessary. So having something that's physically grounding an interaction with someone like this is something that I mostly experience through beer, to be perfectly honest. Sometimes food, but it's like, I know you're experiencing the same thing I'm experiencing. Like, of course, the room's the same temperature, all that, but like we're ingesting something. And so when we can talk about this thing, that's like, I'm tasting this. It's something that connects my more abstract kind of less grounded brain in like, all right, I can connect with this person because of this physical thing we're both experiencing.
Do you have any examples or stories of a time that's happened that's been really kind of fun or engaging for you? I don't even need to know the specifics of what you're tasting at the time.
Yeah. I mean, it's part of the fun of building a brewery with like my business partner Dylan and Ryan and Ari were the guys that help us most often. Is that after every brew, we sit down and we share the same beers and we talk about them. We also do this thing called playing the game where you have to guess the ABV and the untapped score, but that's just like a more side, just fun thing. But creating this kind of continued shared experience with those guys and building our tasting vocabulary. So when you say something tastes like this, I know it means this. Like we were doing this beforehand where we were both drinking the same or talking about the same beer. And talking about like this like toasted rice, and you're like, it's kind of it's more like not like an oxidation character, but kind of like this, when we were describing the same flavor, but getting a better understanding of how each of us are internalizing it.
Right.
It's a little window into like the internal world and the internal categorization or cataloging that people have, and it's really fascinating and vital to me, and like that's. I don't know if I have a specific example of a singular beer experience. It's more like the depth of relationship that you can get to when you do this with someone over and over again. And because you can talk about ideas all you want, and that's lovely and beautiful, but they're all abstract. But when you talk about something physical in a way like that, and you describe it really in depth with great care, you really get to know someone's thought process, and like I really love that part of it. So it's much more specific than just like the regionality of beer, I suppose.
It's interesting. I've never thought about it that way, but I think you're right. I mean, all my favorite beer experiences have probably been with someone else, you know?
Yeah.
And even the greatest wine I ever drank, I was at my house with a friend, and we were just talking about what was happening in this wine and how cool we thought it was, and oh my gosh, now it's changing. The bottle's been open for a little bit and it's changing. This is so cool. Yeah. And exactly what you're saying, like it almost tastes like it's it's bloody, or you know, and it was super cool. And it was a really interesting experience because it was validating and a shared excitement. If I was drinking it by myself, it wouldn't have been half as fun. It would have been 5% as fun.
Right.
I mean, it just wouldn't have been, you know, like that. So 100%, I totally agree. It's more fun to drink in that way. And, you know, I think at some point maybe there needs to be, I would be curious to know if you guys out there, you don't have to write in, but it would be interesting to know. You're like 1 or 2 or 3, or just think of an amazing beer experience you had. And even if you were at a festival, you weren't with 1,000 people. I'm curious if, were you off on the festival by yourself, tasted something, and then, you know, found your crew that you were with later and then told them it was a really good experience? My guess is not. You either did it and then immediately grabbed someone, brought them over, and watched them taste it, or you both experienced it at the same time. Maybe there were 3 or 4 of you, maybe 5 of you, but there was a smallish group of you all kind of experiencing something. I would bet. That's just how it goes, right?
And then when you do that over time with really thoughtful people, you end up like developing your own vocabulary in a way, right? Where you just all taste the same things, and you all try to take this. You all give your subjective experience of this shared objective thing, right? You're all getting the same molecules or whatever on your palate, and then you all try to articulate what it is, and it's very exciting just to do that. But then also, like, part of what I love is to interact with like the Ryan, Ari, and Dylan, and be like, well, how do we now make something out of what this shared language and this shared idea of what's important about beer come from that? And like this show isn't really about like the way the beer tastes all the time. We talk about it sometimes very quickly, but having these conversations is another way to do that, right? Because we are speaking about our subjective experiences, about objective things typically, right?
I mean, let's. Do you mind if I expound on it a little bit? So I think one of the things that I think is so cool is how fun is it to be in a industry, to make your livelihood in an industry where people feel this passionate or even this excited or have a positive, enjoyable, more than positive, enjoyable relationship with it. And there are people who fall out of love, and there's definitely bad sides to any industry. But, you know, say what you will, I bet you people who are, you know, in you know, working in, you know, accounts receivable in the healthcare industry, you know, nothing wrong. I mean, you gotta make that paper,
Right.
But you know, it's just, it doesn't have that same joy to it. I mean, you can enjoy the mechanics of your job, you can enjoy the people you work with, but It can't be like, I love efficiently receiving, the receivables for this giant company.
Right.
It's just not, it could be. I mean, it
and
could
then-
be more abstract. It could be like, well, I like taking a process and breaking it down and doing it and putting a team together and stuff like that, which is super cool, but it's so much more fun that it's, this somewhat burgeoning, somewhat small, local, manufactured product with people who are in it because, for the most part, because they think it's fun or cool or whatever reason. You know?
And then that segues very nicely into that. It's like this interesting selection mechanism for people who care very strongly about the output of their work and being connected to it in some way. That can also, lead down a dark path sometimes if you get exploited because of it. But for the most part, and often at least, it's exciting to be around people who are excited to be where they are, right? And that's most of the time the case with people who work in the beer industry in some way. And that's really fulfilling in a lot of ways. And something you need to be very precious with, right? You can't abuse it, but it's very, it's energizing.
Yeah, I mean, even like, not even, but like someone that not something that I would really like to do, which would be a shift brewer at a large craft brewery, right?
Sure.
It's just not something that, to me, would be fulfilling. But when you talk to these people, with exceptions, I would say, there are exceptions, but
Sure.
I mean, they're still like, they're happy to be brewing beer. I mean, they like brewing beer. I mean, they might, it's BS that we have to do all this all the time, or I wish I had more say, or, you can always say that about, everyone's boss is an idiot. I mean, everyone knows that. But, like, it is nice that, like, you don't have that conversation too often where it's like, I hate brewing beer. I don't want to do this anymore. I mean, people who are brewers want to be brewers.
You just go, right? Yeah, and that there's something cool about that, right? That personality type that really gives a hoot about the thing, about making a thing. Mm-hmm. It's a select group of people that really care about making or presenting something in the best way they possibly can, right?
Yeah. And there's just a lot of those people in this industry. They're not everyone. I mean, you get down to, there's some people who are super passionate about their role in sales. Mm-hmm. And we've had like Andrew Tater on this show in the past, and that dude
Tater's
loves
special, though, right?
craft beer. Right. Not all salespeople are like that.
I was doing deliveries today, and I was at another craft beer focused store, and it was like 6 or 7 beer reps or spirit reps deep for this guy, and he's like, "It's Tuesdays." Literally,
I was gonna say it's a Tuesday. I know what you're talking
literally,
about.
I was like, "It's a Tuesday," and I was
someone's
like,
holding
"Jeez."
court.
Yeah, it would kill me. It would absolutely like drain me just having to deal with a lot of people. But
I know people who loved Tuesdays at that place as reps.
I'm sure
Like waiting in line, they're all doing their work as they wait for their moment to get in front of the person, and
yeah.
I know people.
I wonder if we're talking about the same place. Probably
really?
are.
Mutual friends. It's a place that you and I enjoy going to, right?
I've never been there with you.
Oh, we're talking about
I
different
do. I know the
place.
place you're talking about now, though.
That's also a Tuesday, I believe.
That was a cool Tuesday. Yeah, I've been. That's Delilah's, right? You're talking about Delilah's.
Yeah.
I was not at Delilah's.
Oh, okay.
This is This is a store.
A shop.
Yeah, it's a shop.
Got it.
And it was specifically like a beer centric store, and none of these reps were beer reps. They're all like spirit and wine reps, and it's just like I couldn't even imagine having to do that all day long.
Right.
Anyway, this is things we like though. But how did I tangent us into that?
Right. I don't know. I think it was about. I said Tater loves the sales side of it,
Yeah.
but not all the salespeople are like that.
Tater's special. Tater is like, oh, these people were sharks though. Also, they would be like, I would watch them play this game of like, he would order one type of bourbon, and then they would talk about one that was one more, and one sales rep would be like, well, I didn't have access to that last week. Check if you have access to that. And like, this is a very a veteran sales rep, and he'd be like, I'm good. But it was like they were clearly playing this game of like, he wants this. This is a higher like price point. Can you check if you have access to it this week? Because there wasn't any in last week, and it's like,
Oh, they're trying to mess with the guy's mind or something?
well, he clearly knew they were, but it's like, how do you go into this interaction being like, I'm going to try to like trick this guy into buying Macallan 12 instead of whatever the other one was. Like,
Right.
I don't know. It was just like, anyway, that's not what this conversation was about.
That's when you just look at him stone-faced and just like, are we done?
That was me
What's the
saying
deal?
Tater's special because Tater is like incredibly passionate and really good about like, I think actually addressing the needs of the buyer.
Right.
And like being like, what do you actually want and need? Not just being like, well, it would really help me if you bought the more expensive thing. But anyway,
He lost a job over his unwillingness to do that. Not, a job. Not, but years ago.
Yeah, I remember.
Yeah.
That's very punk rock.
Right.
That's very true ethos driven.
Right.
And I love that.
Sorry, Tater, if I just blew up your spot.
I can't give everyone the same advice that they should all do that, but it makes me respect Tater a lot, and that's why I'm like, he's different.
Right. But it isn't just the makers, right? That's kind of what I was getting at.
Right.
You were talking about makers.
That's just my lens on that, right? But then when you meet people, like that's why I'm like Tater is a special person, right? Tater cares, and you get to meet those people. Like Eric Capron mostly does sales. He's a special person. I've never met anyone who gives more F's than Eric Capron. Still going on the radio? Mm-hmm. Can I say the F word? Yeah, sure. So like interacting with those people that are actually really passionate, not just like if I hit these numbers, I get to get more.
Not
money.
phoning it in like Edmar.
Yeah, the least passionate,
passionate person,
most
I've
dispassionate,
ever met.
cold, and calculating.
Right. But even look at Serge here. I mean, how awesome is that? Serge drags his butt all the way down here and helps us out. Runs the effing show for years.
Right.
It's amazing.
Makes this show actually happen.
It's amazing. So I am deeply happy to be in that kind of an industry where it's like I'm not only doing my own thing and creating my own, have my a business, but it's in something that I can feel good about.
The thing itself is exciting to people, not just because of its intoxicating qualities, but because of its like the vibrancy of it.
Right.
Even as we sometimes lament, like we wish beer was more alive, people were doing things that they believe more. Like it's still an incredibly alive category compared to like microchips or a lot of other or
like,
insurance.
The MyPillow guy loves his pillow.
Those pillows might
but
be alive.
But he's the only one in that company who cares that much.
A lot of people love those pillows.
Not as much as that dude.
No.
Even if you're in that company, it's like, yeah, these are cool pillows. It's a good job. I've gotten a lot of raises. They really are exploding, which is cool. Makes me like my job. But, widgets are paying more? Sweet. I am on to it.
Yeah.
Which happens a little bit in this industry too, but...
Right. It's also beer is something that along the lines of what I was talking about before of like a shared subjective experience is along with food is the only thing that people create where people even attempt for it to be creative and art that you literally becomes part of you physically. Mm-hmm. Like you can look at a painting, you can listen to music, but those are just like sound waves hitting your ear or the colors hitting your eyes. Like you literally ingest beer and it like gives you calories and it gives you like maybe not everything's great, but like it literally becomes part of your corporeal form, which is just so mind blowing to me and so cool. Like it's something that
you're making. That's something that someone's going to
and that
consume.
we share the experience and we gets excited about it. Like yes, when I really think about making something, I'm like someone is going to like ingest this and it's going to become part of their being, even if it's for a temporary part of that time, like physically become part of it, not even like metaphysically or esoterically, like they're going to be like, oh, I had an experience with this. It's actually going to like interact with their cells. And that's like just mind blowing. And then gives you this like very intense sense of responsibility.
Really?
Yeah. and that like obviously it has to be making it food safe is not hard when you make beer, right? It's like it's gonna no one's gonna get sick.
I guess it's a responsibility
if they drink
from
a
that sense.
reasonable amount of beer, but that people. And not everyone's going to do this, and I know not everyone's going to do this, but some people every once in a while will interact with this in a way where it becomes part of them, right? And like, that physical thing is part of it, a metaphysical thing. I'm probably in a select group of people that does this more often than not, but the fact that there are people out
You tripping
there.
balls right now?
No, I'm not at all. I'm stone cold sober.
It's interesting. Your eyes are completely dilated.
Well, I have a concussion.
Oh, okay.
But no, it's like this is like, and this is really honestly how I think a lot about like what am I doing and why do it? Even though it's a small percentage of people that probably engage in that way on a regular basis, that small percentage is what really, really like is the fuel in the engine of like I have to care about these things more than they're going to care about it to make it to get half as good as it should be for them.
I was talking to a group of prospective brewery owners this morning, and one thing that I was telling them was, all the things that I thought and all the pitfalls that I see people, potentially go through, and what people have tried, and how a lot of brewers, seem to come onto the scene and think that they're gonna, do what someone else has done before, but just do it better. And I said, and someone is going to do that. Someone's going to do something a new way that will become the new normal. That will be, the next thing. And I'm excited to see genuinely what it is, because there was a little while, I think maybe, I don't know, several years ago, where I think we had a sense of like the general trend of where stuff was going to be. Maybe before all the big buyouts started happening, and maybe even into that, we had an idea like there's growth, there's new breweries, the trends are going in this direction, styles are going in this direction. They're going to start doing more. The stouts are going to get bigger. There's going to be more seasonality. There's going to be more limited stuff. But for years, it's just been like, I have no idea where this stuff is going to go, how it's going to compete. It's going to do it. I mean, craft beer isn't going away. I mean, it just can't. So what's going to happen? I mean, I guess it could just completely languish, but there's too many creative and interesting people out there, and people looking for creative, interesting stuff. And I feel very fortunate that I'm not in a position to have to create that. I just get to wait and see when it happens. And when my eyes light up, go and tell someone else like, whoa, sure. All right, you guys come here because you want us to tell you when there's something you have to try, right? Yeah. Well, here it is. Try it. That's awesome. That's so much fun. Yeah. I mean, obviously, it marks with the same timeline of this podcast that I didn't discover Scratch, but became like a true evangelist for Scratch. Yeah. Like I wasn't like this my whole life. It just happens to be the same amount of time, right? As this podcast, I think it was like the second episode. Scratch. So quick side note. We're talking about breweries that were of place. Was this during the show last week or after the show? And then we had a text thread, right? Like, what are the breweries that give you a sense of place? This
was like the round table with Edmar, and then a text thread we had with Doug about that show, where it was like tap room versus local watering hole.
And you were talking about, well, what are tap rooms? Not bars, specifically brewery tap rooms that give you a sense of that place. Yeah. Right? And there's some that are like, to me, I think I said like Oscar Blues in Fremont. Like that felt incredibly Oscar Blues when I was there. That's not like the most sexy, romantic place, but it was like that was like 100%. That was them. Hill Farmstead, I think, is an easy one. Cantillon is an easy one, you know. But I mean, Scratch is like so far. It's right at the top of that list.
Yeah.
Bar none, I would say I mean, it literally is. Nothing can be more of place than that.
Right.
I mean, maybe Cantillon. I would say this even blows Cantillon out of the water for of place.
And I think in that conversation, I was trying to talk about like top to bottom curation, which I think talking to Edmar about curation was like ships in the night, where how we were using that the same way we were using innovation with Doug. But the idea that like you can go to land that one of the guys who owns this brewery grew up on, and then they're going to make you things by picking things off of the land and out of the land, and then you're going to consume them on the land. I mean, that's like that's what I was. And that's the most extreme version of what I was talking about, right?
Yeah, right.
Where it's like you cannot get more curated and of that place than that place. Like they literally are making the thing that's becoming part of your corporeal form, to call it back, then you're becoming one with that land because you're drinking the things and eating the things they made.
And I think they are very much on the same page as you. I think they're very aware of that, even as much as they style the taste of their beers after the sense that you get while you're there. So Aaron has been walking by these patches of certain, like he was telling people, like when I'm foraging, I'm not wandering in the woods.
Right.
I know where this is. And what he didn't say is because I've been walking past it since I was 13 years old or younger or something like that. This is my land. This is where I go.
Right.
He also knows the place at such a disgusting level that when a tornado rips up all his birch trees, he says, I'm like, what are you going to do? You used your birch sap for this and that. And he was like, oh, it's not a big deal because in 18 months, all these mushrooms will come up out of there, and then from that, this will happen, and the land will transform, and I will use what the land gives me. But that's all beside the point. So Aaron has told me that the land to him isn't strikingly beautiful like Rocky Mountains are, or like cliffs, or like the tropics and stuff like that. He says it's a more, it's a subtle beauty. It is a, it's just he said it's a subtle beauty, but it is as beautiful as any of those places, but it's not in your face shouting that it's beautiful. And he says, and I want our beers to give that same sense. I'm getting goosebumps.
Yeah.
Right now. And because he was right. He was like, I want our beers to have a subtle sense of beauty because that is what this land is.
Right.
So that's
who
amazing.
He is, right?
Yes.
It's who he is because he grew up on that land, right, too, right? And so it's this expression of the land and who he has become as a person. There's other people in that company. It's not just him, obviously, but like, and that's, it makes me almost shake with excitement that things like that exist.
Well, here you go. So the whole point that I was trying to get to, which is one of the things I love the most about craft beer and the little role that I play is, giving people joy, right? I've talked to you and your dad about it. Like that's what I love about it. So
I think that's something. Just pause there for a second. We were talking earlier about how sometimes people misunderstand your curmudgeonly ways or your takes as being.
That was before the show started. Yeah,
as being whole cloth, that you dislike this thing because sometimes you don't like it. I think people would be edified to know that when my dad's someone who loves to talk about people's like your why, and he's like a strategic thinker. He's done this for years as like a consultant and leading a large branch of a nonprofit. But the first thing you said was to bring joy to people, which I want people to know that about. Like, that's what this place and what you are genuinely about.
Absolutely.
And
100%.
Yeah. And this is now sounding like a propaganda show to be like, no, Chris isn't that bad. And
Right, it's
and
not,
he's-
I promise.
Yeah. But
I only hunt MILF during MILF season.
Well, that brings joy.
MILF season. I'm not an off-season MILF hunter.
Yeah, that's Delaware Shore season.
Yeah.
But
But
no,
this is very much in plays into it because it was such a true sense of that. And I didn't think about that prior to this show even starting. And we had Marka and Aaron come up for the first time in like 3 years, give a presentation about these Stein beers that they did. And I had been running around like crazy getting the events ready. We did it in 2 sessions. Serge, you were at the first session, right? So it's funny. So Serge can validate that I'm not BSing. I had not eaten all day, so I was like, all right, I'll go to the second session because I definitely want to check it out. I'm going to go run and eat something during the first session, right? So I didn't really know what they were talking about and stuff like that. And then when it was over, I kind of came in, probably was there for the last 10 minutes or so. Serge was even like, yeah, it's kind of a Q&A, but it's ready to wrap up, And I was like, okay, cool. Thanks, Serge. And then Serge is already like, it's ready for a fade, if you know what I'm saying. And I was like,
fade
exactly. I was like,
Clay's jogger.
Exactly. So then as people were coming out, I had an award-winning home brewer come up, and he was just like, my mind's blown. I've never heard anyone talk about beer this way.
Right.
Just like hard for him to gather words for what these people were doing. And it wasn't bombastic what they're doing, And then another person at the second session came up and said, I've never thought that much about beer in my life. And he didn't mean like the calculations of beer. He was like, I never thought that deeply about beer ever. Right. And not in a hard way, in just like in a simple, beautiful way, right? And in both those, and the first time I said to the person who was the home brewer, I mean, and this guy is a legit award-winning home brewer, by the way, and I said, like I sometimes worry, but the fact that you guys get it, like I get it, you get it. Then he's like, I get it, and I was like, right, how amazing is that? And he got it because I got it, and I wanted to share it with people.
Yeah.
And some of them got it. I mean, the thing is, the event never even got live. It was supposed to be an event that we put out to like so many people, and we were going to do a pre-sale to our awards members and stuff like that. I mentioned that on the show, I believe. And it didn't even get to it. Like, people were just like, bang, I'm on it. I want to be in. I want to experience this thing. And I hope they either were satisfied, and a few of them were just like, eyes glazed over, like, whoa. And it's just 2 people sitting at the end of a room talking with some pictures of a wheelbarrow full of rocks, literally. I mean, it wasn't bombastic at all, but it was like, here is the beer, here are some pictures, and like, this is what we do.
Well, it's one of those things where it sounds like a Portlandia sketch almost, right? Where it's like one of the ingredients to this beer was just hot rocks. But then when you engage with it in like with an open heart and open mind, and you see it's like one of the most beautiful things where they're like, and especially because beer has become such a commodity. Even craft beer has become a commodity. And so when you have these little moments with people like that where it's not that they don't want to make money by making their beer. They have to, right? And to some extent. But when they're like, well, we didn't put that as the number one thing, right? It's not like, how do we pay back the investors? It's unfortunately novel. Do you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Like, it's one of those things where everyone thinks that it's like, oh, we got to run like GE ran when Jack Welch was running. It's like, no. You can run your business however you please. I'm splashing the pot. If anyone knows the Rounders, you have like, I mean, you can't just burn money, but you can nest things differently, and if you have different priorities, but then you just have to accept the realities of those two, right? This is more now talking about me, but yeah, I mean, those the beers they produce and the ethos behind those beers and the pathos those beers actually have is pretty surprising. Like, most beers don't have that.
No.
Most beers you'd be like real hard stretched to be like, yeah, like what I was talking about earlier, being like, yeah, no, it's like an art that someone makes and then puts inside themselves. Like, most beers aren't that. But when you find ones that really are, and like a lot of those beers are a sense of place, where having them in the place makes so much more sense than being outside of the place. But then when you have some of their beers specifically, and this happens with their beers too, but there's one I have in mind, and you are like actually transported to that place, not being like, oh, you had a Belgian Trappist ale and you're in the Trappist. Like, I had that chanterelle mushroom beer de garde, and I'm like, oh, I'm in the woods. I know, I feel where this comes from.
What happens with me is it's that scene in Ratatouille, and I've literally watched this scene and like my eyes start to like get wet, where it's like the son of a bitch food writer, you know, who I can definitely relate to because he's a a-hole curmudgeon, stuff like that.
He has a YouTube channel.
He's a podcast.
Yeah.
And he takes a bite of the ratatouille, and and I'm like, this is crazy, but my eyes are welling up a little bit right now because I'm crazy. And he's
really
like,
are.
they are, and it's like he's like transported to him falling off his bike. You see the bike in the background; it's got a bent wheel or something. He's got a scrape on his knee, and his mom takes him in and gives him a hug and sets him down and gives him some ratatouille. And he was like, and then it just like warps back. And it's like, it connected to him. And that's what you're saying, right? I mean, it's like, you just brought me back to this memory of like love and stuff like that. And I mean, that is the stuff that like the fact that these people can do that with something that they make.
Yeah.
Like it's not something that I could never do, but it's I have such reverence for it, and I feel so fortunate to be able to maybe do something that lets people be like, "Wow, I'm in the woods, I'm there."
Sure.
You know, it's cool.
And people are very afraid to say that their making of beer is art or artistic in any way, and most of it isn't. But I don't think people should shy away from trying to do that.
Yeah.
And trying, if we're defining art as human creation intended to evoke sympathetic emotions, right? And so hone your skill to the point where you think you can try to imbue the consumer, if they want to pay attention to it, with similar emotion to what you were having when you were trying to make it. I think that's a pretty cool thing you can do with beer, and it makes me very excited that it's an option.
Yeah.
And they do it. I think they do it really well. It might not be specifically emotion, but feeling. And
yeah.
I don't know.
I mean, how many beers have you had of them where it's like, this tastes like I'm walking through the woods? It's got an autumnal, leafy feeling to it, taste to it, and that's weird. And I've had many people even drink their sodas, and someone told me one time, I was like, they said this tastes like Central Illinois. And I don't think they knew anything about it.
Scratchers.
And I was like, this is crazy. I had another person say, like, this reminds me, like, it's like my childhood. I'm roasting marshmallows. Sure. And this was not a marshmallow stout. There was no marshmallow. There was no vanilla in this beer. It was like, how they do it, I don't know. But the people bringing up, they describe their beers as memories more than any brewery I've ever thought of put together. There's no one even close. They describe their beers as memories.
Right, and there are a lot of breweries that are very dissimilar from them that are trying to do that, and it's nostalgia more than it is like memories. But they're a really wonderful example of how much our culture privileges language as the most effective mode of communication, and it is the most used and it's the most effective for most things, but it's not for emotions, right? And so that's what art's for. That's what like really thoughtful beer is for.
I mean, geez. I mean, if you can get that out of beer, then good on you, man.
Right. And I think this is my call to people making beer is to at least once a year try to make a beer where you do that. Like I know there are very intense and real world pressures about all the other things that beer needs to do in the economy and your personal life.
And the big guys can do it too, because shout out to Mike Siegel. That dude does it. Because I'm looking right now at Brewery Yard. That dude's done it as the R&D brewer at, or he's got a new title now, but whatever.
And it will enrich you in ways that you thought you were burnt out on.
Right.
Even just to try, might burn you. It might hurt you in other ways when it doesn't necessarily do what you want to do. But like Doug was talking about last week with social media stuff, reps. Like, make it a point, right?
Right.
Try to do it and don't recoil from it.
I also love
when
the
it
idea.
Doesn't work.
You were talking about how people doing the same thing in reference to Scratch, and I was just chuckling to myself, imagining someone tasting it and, it not being of a sense of place. But like, oh, yeah, totally. It just tastes like every other a beer where they've made the mash false bottom out of woven cedar so that it goes through it. And it's like, just, standard. What else you got?
I'm so bored with these burdock root, like.
Right.
Yeah.
And you have to be crazy too to do that, because he did make the false bottom of his mash tun out of wood, and he wove it together, and it imbues whatever. I think it was cedar or something, because he's like, well, you can't put it in the boil; it's gonna be too much. But as it's going through, that's the false bottom on our mash tun, because we mash it from in a fooder. Right.
Can we also admit that the story of that alone enriches the actual drinking experience of that? Like the way, the actual taste of it and flavor of it, the way your brain brings that in, knowing that someone cared that much to do that actually makes that taste better.
Well, that's a great
point. It
doesn't
change the molecules of that thing, and I'm not arguing the gas chromatograph's going to be any different, but it changes the way. But who cares about that? Because you're not selling beer to the gas chromatograph. You're selling beer to human beings who want to feel connected to something. Not all of them, sure, but
I'd go a step further and say Scratch without that context will not give you that feeling. I just don't think it will.
Well, you said the sodas gave people those feelings. So it could.
I guess so. That's true.
But to people to diminish the enrichment of that experience with the context as that beer's not actually that good because you have to know is to entirely miss the point. Not just of that brewery, but of this.
What you're trying to do.
Thing we're doing.
Yeah.
Blind tastings are great, right? They will tell you which thing tasted different than the other one. But that's not how anyone that you're trying to sell beer to is experiencing anything you're selling.
Not just beer. I mean, the wine world. I mean, that talk about the algorithmication of that. I mean, every wine has to have a story, and and I joke now because some of the stories are legitimately awesome because I've sat in on a couple teach the teacher things with wines where you're sitting in with the reps and they're going through these people, the history of the land. And if it's in Italy, it's going back hundreds and hundreds of years. Why this was planted, who this is, what happened to it, why this person does it, and why the wines taste this way. But it's funny, it's become so shitty sometimes with
it's the playbook, right?
Well, now
you learn why people are connecting to that.
This beer is called, I'm just looking at literally the thing, 40 done, because when the winemaker
box that we put
right, because when the winemaker it's funny, he has two children and he said, you know what, when I'm 40 I'm done, and then this wine was what he made after he turned 40 and his kids are out of the I don't believe any of that. I don't believe any of that. I believe that you made the name of that wine to have some sort of story that has faux meaning to it, and that's, you know what? well done, because that's exactly what this wine tastes like. Something that is trying to grasp at meaning and is faux. So it was like, bravo, I guess.
There is something, there's a conversation to be had. I don't know if it's an important one about how is that also like as beautiful because it's like so perfectly descriptive of this soulless thing you're describing. Like the marketing is perfectly soulless. The actual thing they created is so. Well, that's
Let's bring it back.
Being very harsh.
No. Let's bring it back. Boardwalk T-shirt store. I mean, come on. I mean, that's what that is. I mean, talk about sense of place. Nothing will take you.
Nothing's more the sense of the mid-Atlantic coast than
those T-shirt stores.
MILF Hunter T-shirt store.
God, it is true though.
Right.
You know, I mean, it is perfect for that time and place. And what else can you say? We've been going for a while. I'm guessing 99% of our listeners have long ago moved on to...
Or they've deeply engaged with what we're talking about.
That's right.
Because this is what you come here for. You come for esoteric feeling talk with Mike.
Right. Like, I just want to hear you guys have a round table where you argue. Don't worry. That's coming. That's coming. Don't you worry. Anything else that you wanted to add to this, Mike? Anything that we missed? Anything that you just... love that you're like, you know what we didn't talk about?
I would genuinely love for people to send us things that no one talks about that they specifically love about beer. Either it be beer right now or like, and not just like, I had this one great experience, but like these kind of like great concepts that like maybe we didn't talk about. I would love to hear from people to make myself feel less alone.
Let me incentivize people. Anyone who sends an electronic or a real letter. Normally it's just a real letter. Electronic letters count.
That's good enough to be read on air. We'll get a MILF Hunter T-shirt in medium.
Yeah, no. They'll get either put it in your, and I'll read anyone that is thoughtful. I will read. How about that? You can get put it in what you want. Do you want some Beer Temple or some Is Was merch? And we'll send you some Is Was or
we will
Beer
make
Temple
some merch finally, and we'll send it to you.
You'll get something.
Yeah.
You'll get something, I promise.
Yeah.
And we'll do it. So share with everyone stuff that you love about craft beer on any level. You know, like you're listening to this podcast, you love it at some level. You know, I love how much there is to know, and I just keep learning new things when I listen to other shows, not this one, but let's be real. But, you know, I mean, I was there too, just the fascination of how much there is to learn and stuff like that. I loved that when I was in that phase of just like devouring all the information there is about beer.
If we want to make this meta, I genuinely love understanding other people's connections to beer. And like specific weird little nuances about it.
Come on, help him out with his kink, guys. Let him.
Well, we know Mike
email.
can't give him the shirt. So.
That's true. Well, I mean, come on. It's you're licensed. You're not doing anything illegal. You know, it's fully sanctioned. So yeah. Well, thanks for indulging me, Mike, in this topic and allowing me to show people that I don't hate everything.
As a Chris's nice propaganda show, I'm glad I could. And he actually is, people.
Yeah. There you go. Perfect. I can just hear the cash registers ringing.
He loves genuine compliments. He's very good at receiving them and makes him feel very comfortable. So compliment Chris in your letter as well.
Yeah, not so much. Don't like those things. Yeah. So yeah, there was that. Also, shout out to Lee McComb. We had a little going away party for him on Friday, and he is just an awesome guy. Can't wait to see what he's doing next. Talk about someone who would just be amazing to have on the show. Too bad I will have to drag him kicking and screaming. But talk about someone who, like, a personality that people need to hear from, right?
Maybe I can trick him into a beer that saved his life.
Oh, yeah. changed his
Or
life.
oh, yeah. Whatever. I'm upping the ante.
I was
I'm upping
drowning.
the ante on the show.
Exactly. I had hit rock bottom.
It was a low fill that was floating in the bucket because
Exactly. A beer
And it
that
helped
saved your life. Anyone, pick any of them.
any beer that saved
Any
your
beer
life.
that saved your life.
I'm up in, yeah.
Doesn't
we're
need to be
upping
the beer that saved your life. Just
yeah.
a beer.
All of us have like 12 of them.
Yeah. That would be great if you could get Lee on here.
I might just do one of those just for my personal files if he won't come on the show.
So there's a spot. He made a Spotify playlist for the event. It's public. Anyone can get it. It's called Outlaw S word because it's going to get bleeped if I
You
say
already
it.
said it a couple times.
Oh no, but it'll be on the yeah, but it gets
podcast.
bleeped. But on
This
the
is a podcast
right? It's
now.
true. Outlaw shit beer temple. It's amazing. It was just called Outlaw
Outlaw
Shit, but there's
Shit.
like
Yeah.
a million playlists called that. So, talk about just a really fun outlaw country playlist.
So when I lived in
together.
Nashville, the record label I worked at was in that like Waylon Jennings outlaw country house where they had the recording. It was pretty cool. It was a lot of history. I wasn't as abreast of it then, but it was very cool.
I barely am now. I just know it's a pretty cool playlist that you guys can all listen to, and that's what we were.
Talk about music that's alive.
That's what we were all cranking on Friday and drinking some really cool esoteric half-acre stuff from their barrel program that Lee lovingly cared for. So that was a lot of fun, and Lee might have shed a tear at that event, so that was kind of cool too.
Yeah, he's not a very emotional guy, so
True.
love you, Lee.
Yeah. So anyway, we done here? Anything else, Mike?
No, I think that we covered a lot of ground.
Because Serge has got an itchy fading finger.
Yeah.
So I think that's probably then about it. I think we'll see you guys next week for more of the Beer Temple podcast. Until then.
Remember this is what we wanted. Remember this is what we said. To never be heard or seen from again. Remember this is what we wanted. Remember this is what we said. To never be heard or seen from again. Remember this is what we wanted. Remember this is what we said. To never be heard